I came home that night with dirt on my boots and the smell of pine clinging to my jacket. Stargazing in the hills always cleared my head, until I stepped through the door and heard her. Lisa, my wife of 6 years, was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low but alive with a laugh I hadn't heard in months. Not with me, anyway. "Oh, you're terrible," she giggled, and my stomach twisted. I stood there, frozen, the telescope bag still slung over my shoulder. She didn't hear me come in. She was too wrapped up in whoever was on the other end. I told myself it was nothing, just a friend, maybe her sister. But then she whispered, "I'll see you tomorrow," and hung up quick when she saw me in the doorway. Her face flushed pink, and she fumbled an excuse about a coworker planning a surprise party. I nodded, smiled, let it go. We ate dinner in silence, the hum of the fridge louder than our conversation. But that laugh kept echoing in my head, sultry, secret, not mine. I couldn't shake it. Therefore, I stayed up after she went to bed, staring at the ceiling instead of the stars. She'd been distant lately, sure, but I'd chalked it up to her job. Nannying for Greg Palmer's kid paid well, better than my gig fixing HVAC units, and she loved that little boy like he was ours. Too much, maybe. The next morning, she left early, kissing my cheek with lips that felt rehearsed. I watched her car disappear down the street, then spotted something on the counter, a receipt from La Bella Vita, that upscale Italian place downtown. $58 for 2 entrees. Dated last week. She told me she was working late that night, soothing Greg's kid to sleep. No mention of dinner. No mention of anyone else. My chest tightened. I crumpled the receipt and tossed it, but the question stuck. Who was she feeding? And why was she hiding it? I tried to let it go. Really, I did. I spent the day elbow deep in a busted air conditioner, sweat dripping down my back, telling myself Lisa wouldn't lie over something small. She was my rock. 6 years of late-night talks, bad takeout, and promises we'd scratched into the world together. But that receipt gnawed at me like a splinter I couldn't pull out. $58 wasn't nanny money thrown around for kicks. And that laugh, too warm, too private, kept replaying, mocking me. So I dug. Not proud of it, but I did. Her purse was on the couch when I got home. She was in the shower, humming some tune I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then slid her phone out. Passcode was still our anniversary. Sweet, right? Her call log showed 3 late-night chats with GP last week, all after midnight. Greg Palmer, her boss. My pulse kicked up. She'd said he was a control freak, always texting about his son's schedule. But midnight? I scrolled further. Texts, too. "Can't wait to see you." One read. Another. "You're a lifesaver." Vague, sure, but they hit like punches. The shower stopped. I shoved the phone back, heart hammering, and grabbed a beer to look casual. She came out in a towel, smiling, asking about my day. I mumbled something, watching her too close. Her hair was wet, curling at the ends, but her eyes darted away when I asked about Greg. "Oh, he's just stressed," she said, tugging at the towel. "Kid's been fussy." Plausible. So why didn't I buy it? Therefore, I decided to test her. "Wanna grab Italian tomorrow?" I said, casual as anything. Her smile froze, just a beat, then she nodded. "Sure, babe." That night, I couldn't sleep. The stars outside were sharp, begging me to lose myself in them, but my mind was on her. Greg wasn't just her boss. He was rich, smooth, the kind of guy who got what he wanted. And Lisa? She'd been glowing lately, new clothes, new confidence. I didn't want to believe it, but the pieces were stacking up, and they weren't painting a pretty picture. I wasn't some jealous nutcase. I trusted Lisa with everything. We'd built a life from scratch, her waitressing while I hauled tools, dreaming of a house with a yard. But now, that was a brick in my gut. Those calls, that receipt, her jittery excuses, they didn't add up. I needed proof, not paranoia. So I made a move. Greg lived in a gated sprawl, 20 minutes out, all glass and money. Lisa was there that afternoon, working. I called her, said I'd swing by to say hi. "Oh, don't bother," she chirped too fast. "It's chaos here." I went anyway. The guard waved me through. Guess my toolbox screamed, harmless. Greg's place loomed, a modern castle dwarfing the pines around it. I parked, grabbed my scope bag as a prop, and knocked. Lisa answered, eyes wide, holding Greg's son, Tommy. "Nathan?" What are you doing here? Her voice was tight, but she stepped aside. Inside, the house smelled like leather and wealth. Tommy clung to her, all chubby cheeks and trust, and for a second, I felt stupid. She looked like a nanny, not a liar. But then Greg strolled in, tall, tan, smirking like he owned the air. "Nice to meet the husband," he said, shaking my hand too hard. His eyes flicked to Lisa, then back to me, and I caught it. A spark, a secret. "Lisa's a godsend," he added, clapping her shoulder. She laughed, but it was forced. I asked about Tommy's sleep, fishing for cracks. "Oh, she's got the magic touch," Greg said, grinning. "Puts us all at ease." Us? My skin prickled. Therefore, I stayed longer than I should have, watching. Lisa bounced Tommy, cooing, but her glances at Greg were too long, too soft. He lingered near her, casual but close. I mentioned the scope, offered to show Tommy the stars sometime. Greg nodded, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. When I left, Lisa walked me out, whispering, "You didn't have to come." Her tone was sharp, defensive. I drove off, replaying it all. Greg's smirk. Her nerves. The way they moved like they shared a script I wasn't in. Something was rotting here, and I was done guessing. Driving home, I couldn't shake Greg's face, that smug, polished grin, like he knew something I didn't. Lisa's edge stayed with me too, her words biting where they used to soothe. I'd always thought she was happy nannying, good pay, a cute kid, a break from our grind. But now, every memory felt suspect. The late nights, she'd stumble in, glowing with excuses about Tommy's tantrums. The new necklace she'd brushed off as a thrift find. Context was shifting, and I didn't like the picture it made. So I tailed her. Not proud, but desperate. Next evening, she left at 6, claiming Greg needed her to settle Tommy. I waited 5 minutes, then followed, keeping my truck a block behind her sedan. The sky was bruising purple, stars just peeking out. Normally, I'd be up a hill with my scope, not stalking my wife. Her car turned into Greg's estate, but she didn't park by the garage like usual. She pulled around back, near the guest wing. I cut my lights, idling at the gate's edge, watching through the trees. She slipped out, hair loose, no nanny bag, just her purse. Then it happened. She didn't head to the nursery's glow upstairs. She glanced around, quick and guilty, and darted to a side window. Greg's bedroom, I'd bet my life on it. The blinds were half drawn, but I saw her climb in, smooth as if she'd done it before. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white. Conflict hit like a freight train. She wasn't there for Tommy. She was there for Greg. Therefore, I killed the engine and waited, breath shallow, praying I'd see her climb out laughing at some innocent mix-up. She didn't. The light dimmed, shadows moved, and my world cracked. I trusted her with my soul, and she was sneaking through windows for a guy who'd never know her like I did. Rage bubbled, but I held it. I needed more than shadows. I needed proof that'd bury her lies. So I drove home, mind racing, planning. The stars were out now, cold and distant, but they didn't calm me tonight. They just watched me break. I didn't confront her when she got home. She breezed in at 11, smelling faintly of cologne, not mine, and mumbled about Tommy's rough night. I nodded, sipping coffee, playing the fool while my insides churned. I'd seen her climb into Greg's window, a thief in her own life, but shadows weren't enough. I needed evidence, something concrete to shatter her story and my doubts. So I hatched a plan, simple but sharp. Greg's kid loved stars, right? I'd use that. Next day, I called Lisa, all casual. "Hey, Tommy's into space stuff. Thought I'd drop off my old scope for him. Greg cool with that?" She hesitated, then said, "Sure, he'll love it." Perfect. That afternoon, I showed up at Greg's, scope in hand, toolbox tucked under my arm. Lisa was there, feeding Tommy in the kitchen, and Greg hovered nearby, all charm. "Nathan, man of the hour," he said, clapping my back. I smiled, set the scope up in Tommy's room, and asked to check the window, said it'd be great for stargazing. They bought it. While they chatted downstairs, I worked fast, slid a tiny camera, bought cheap online, into the scope's base, angled it toward Greg's room across the hall. Wired it to my phone. Context. I knew the house layout from my last visit. Conflict. If Lisa went back to tuck Greg in, I'd have it on tape. I tested it, grainy, but clear enough. Downstairs, Lisa watched me leave, her smile tight. "See you tonight," she said. I nodded, stomach twisting. That night, she left again, Tommy's fussy. I stayed home, phone in hand, watching the feed. At first, nothing, just Greg's empty room, all sleek furniture and ego. Then at 10, the door creaked open. Lisa stepped in, hair down, no apron. Greg followed, loosening his tie, and she moved close, whispering something that made him laugh. My jaw clenched as she eased him into bed, her hands lingering where a nanny's wouldn't. The footage rolled, undeniable, and my heart sank through the floor. She wasn't just watching his kid, she was tending to him. And I had it all. Now what? I sat there in the dark, the phone's glow burning my eyes as the footage looped. Lisa's hands on Greg, his smug grin, the way she leaned in. It wasn't a nanny soothing a kid's nightmare. It was my wife, tending to a man who wasn't me, in a room that wasn't ours. 6 years of trust crumbled in grainy pixels. I wanted to smash something, scream, drive over there and drag her out. But rage doesn't win quiet wars. I needed control, not chaos. So I breathed, slow and sharp, and let the stars outside steady me. Lisa came home at midnight, all fake yawns and long day chatter. I played along, asking about Tommy while my thumb hovered over the video. She didn't notice my grip on the mug, tight enough to crack it. "He's a handful," she said, brushing her hair back, hair that had been loose for Greg. I nodded, smiled, and let her climb into our bed like nothing was wrong. But everything was. Therefore, I stayed up plotting. Confronting her now would just get lies. She'd twist it, cry, make me the bad guy. The next morning, she left for Greg's again, kissing my cheek with lips I couldn't unsee on him. I waited till her car was gone, then pulled up the footage again. Watched it twice, memorizing every move, every laugh. Context hit hard. She'd been doing this for months. New clothes, late nights, that bank account she'd forgotten to mention. Conflict roared in. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious. She played me, and Greg had bankrolled it. I could have gone loud, stormed his mansion with a bat. But that's not me. I'm a guy who fixes things, finds patterns in the sky. So I decided, if she wanted to sneak around, I'd shine a light so bright she couldn't hide. Not just for me, for everyone she'd lied to. Friends, family, Greg's perfect little world. I'd make her betrayal a spectacle. The camera was just the start. I needed more, proof that'd stick, a plan that'd sting. And I knew exactly where to begin. I started with Greg's wife, Claire. She was the key, rich, polished, the kind of woman who'd burn the world down if you crossed her. Lisa thought she was slick, slipping around behind Claire's back, but I'd make sure Claire saw the truth. I found her at a charity brunch downtown, all pearls and sharp smiles, chatting up donors. I dug her schedule off Greg's company's site, public enough to crash. I walked up, toolbox in hand, playing the blue-collar everyman. "Mrs. Palmer?" "Nathan, Lisa's husband." "Got a minute?" Her eyes flicked over me, curious but cool. We sat at a corner table, coffee steaming between us. I kept it vague at first. Mentioned Lisa's long hours, how she'd been helping Greg out a lot. Claire nodded, sipping her latte, but her grip tightened when I said, "She's really devoted, huh?" Even late nights. A shadow crossed her face, quick as a cloud over the moon. "She's good with Tommy," Claire said, voice flat. I leaned in casual but pointed. "Oh, she's good with more than just Tommy. Greg's lucky to have her." Her jaw twitched. She knew something. I didn't show the footage, not yet. I wanted her to stew, to dig. But then she threw me off. "Greg's always needed extra hands," she said, smirking like it was a private joke. My gut sank. Did she already suspect? Therefore, I shifted gears, thanked her, left her with that seed of doubt, and drove off, mind racing. Claire wasn't clueless. She was calculating. Maybe she'd turn a blind eye, maybe not. Either way, I wasn't banking on her alone. That night, I checked the camera feed again. Lisa was back at Greg's, settling him in like clockwork. My chest burned, but I stayed focused. The video was gold. Undeniable, time-stamped, but it wasn't enough to ruin her. I needed leverage, something public, something she couldn't talk her way out of. Claire's reaction stuck with me, though. That smirk wasn't shock. It was strategy. What game was she playing? I couldn't figure it yet, but I'd use it. Step 1 was planted. Step 2 was coming, and it'd hit harder. Claire's smirk haunted me all day. She wasn't some oblivious trophy wife. She was in on something, and that made her dangerous. I'd hoped she'd be my ally, but now I wasn't sure who I was dealing with. Still, I had the footage, and Lisa's lies were piling up like dust on a lens. I couldn't stop there. I needed to hit her where it hurt. So I dug deeper. Her laptop was fair game now. Password still our old dog's name. Dumb move, Lisa. I found a hidden folder. Bank statements. Transfers from GP Enterprises. Thousands. Not nanny pay. Hush money. My hand shook as I scrolled. $5,000 last month alone, tucked into an account I didn't know existed. She'd told me we were saving for a house, but here she was, cashing in on Greg's appreciation. Context slammed into conflict. She wasn't just sneaking around. She was profiting. I wanted to hurl the laptop across the room, but I printed the statements instead, evidence stacking up. Therefore, I upped the ante. If Claire wouldn't bite, I'd go wide. Let the world see what I'd seen. I uploaded the footage to a burner account online, blurred faces just enough to dodge legal heat, but not enough to hide who they were to anyone who knew them. Titled it, Nanny Knows Best, and posted it on a local gossip forum. Within hours, it spread. Friends texting me, dude, is this Lisa? I played dumb, let the wildfire grow. Lisa called me that night, voice shrill. Nathan, what's going on? People are saying crazy stuff. I stayed calm, said I'd heard rumors too. She hung up, rattled. Good. But then the curveball hit. Claire messaged me. Direct, no nonsense. Meet me tomorrow. Coffee shop on 5th. 10 a.m. My pulse spiked. She'd seen it, or someone had tipped her off. Was she mad? Ready to sue? Or something else? I couldn't read her, but I'd go. The footage was out, Lisa was scrambling, and Claire was stepping in. My plan was working too well, maybe. I stared at the stars that night, wondering how deep this hole went. Whatever Claire wanted, it'd change everything. I got to the coffee shop early, palms sweaty, the printed bank statements folded in my pocket. Claire walked in at 10 sharp, heels clicking, her face a mask of cool control. She slid into the booth, ordered an espresso, and stared at me like I was a puzzle she'd already solved. You're the one stirring the pot, she said, not a question. I nodded, kept my voice steady, just letting the truth breathe. She smirked again, that same knowing twist, and leaned in. You think you're clever, Nathan. What's your endgame? I laid it out, how Lisa's extra duties with Greg had gutted me, how the footage proved it, how the money sealed it. Claire didn't flinch, just sipped her drink. Greg's a dog, she said, casual as if we were talking weather. Always has been. My jaw dropped. She knew, but then she kept going. Lisa's not the first. Won't be the last. You want revenge, I get it. But you're playing with my fire now. Her eyes locked on mine, and I felt the shift. She wasn't here to fight me. She was here to deal. I showed her the statements, expecting shock. She glanced, shrugged. Pocket change. Greg's sloppy with his toys. Toys? My blood boiled, but I held it. Therefore, I pushed, asked why she wasn't raging, why she'd let this happen. Claire laughed, sharp and cold. I've got bigger plans than crying over him. You're helping, actually. Helping? My head spun. She wouldn't explain, just said, keep the pressure on. You'll see. Then she left, leaving me with a half-drunk espresso and more questions than I'd walked in with. That night, the forum exploded. Lisa's name was out, Greg's too. She came home sobbing, begging me to fix it. I didn't mean for this, she wailed. I stared at her numb. Didn't mean for what? The cash or the late-night tuck-ins? She froze, caught, then bolted to our room. I didn't follow. Claire's words echoed. Helping her how? I'd wanted Lisa's world to crash, but now I wondered who was really pulling the strings. Lisa locked herself in the bedroom all night, crying loud enough to rattle me, but I didn't knock. Her tears were noise now, empty after what I'd seen, what I'd proven. The forum was a war zone, people picking her apart, Greg's business contacts chiming in, calling him out. I lit the match, and it was burning hot. But Claire's cryptic game gnawed at me. She wasn't just some scorned wife. She was orchestrating something, and I was her pawn. I needed to know why. So I kept pushing, digging for the next blow. I went back to the bank statements, cross-checked dates with the footage. Pattern was clear. Every late shift came with a deposit. Lisa wasn't just tempted. She turned it into a side hustle. I printed more, built a timeline, and emailed it to a local reporter I knew from high school. Anonymous tip, labeled Palmer Scandal. Let the pros take it from there. But then Lisa cornered me that morning, eyes red, voice raw. Nathan, please. Greg made me. I didn't want this. I laughed, bitter and loud. Made you cash his checks? Climbed through his window. She flinched, then tried hugging me. I stepped back. You're done, Lisa. Everyone knows. She sank to the floor, whimpering, but I saw the lie in her slump. She'd played me too long to sell regret now. Therefore, I walked out, leaving her to stew in the mess I'd made public. The reporter texted back. Story was live by noon. Headline: Nanny's double duty rocks local CEO. Perfect. But Claire called right after, voice like ice. You're fast, Nathan. Gala's tomorrow, Greg's big night. Be there. She hung up before I could ask why. My stomach flipped. The gala was Greg's annual flex, suits, champagne, his whole empire on display. Claire wanted me there. Why? To gloat? To finish it? I didn't trust her, but I'd go. Lisa's crash was halfway done. Greg's was next. I stared at the sky that night, Orion's belt sharp above me. Revenge felt good, but Claire's shadow loomed. Whatever she had planned, it had hit harder than I could guess. The gala invite burned a hole in my pocket all day. Claire's call had me spinning. Why drag me into Greg's big night? I'd already torched Lisa's world. The reporter's story was viral, her name mud online. But Claire's angle felt bigger, sharper, like a blade I couldn't see coming. I rummaged through my closet, found an old suit, tight at the shoulders, but it'd do. Lisa watched me from the couch, silent now, her eyes hollow. Where you going? She mumbled. I didn't answer. She didn't deserve it. I drove to the venue, a glitzy hotel ballroom dripping with chandeliers and ego. Greg was center stage, shaking hands, all teeth and tailored charm. Claire glided beside him, radiant in red, her smile a mask. I lingered by the bar, scanning the crowd. Execs, investors, the city's elite. Then Claire caught my eye, nodded toward a side room. I followed, heart thudding. She shut the door behind us, poured 2 whiskeys, and handed me one. You've been busy, she said, voice low. Stories everywhere. I shrugged, sipping the drink. Lisa earned it. Greg, too. She laughed, shortcutting. Oh, he's earned worse. You got the footage handy. Might get twisted. I brought a USB, just in case. Habit from fixing systems, always prepared. I nodded. She smirked. Good. There's a projector upstairs. Gala's live-streamed, big screen for speeches. My jaw dropped. She wanted it public here now, but then she leaned in, eyes glinting. I knew about Lisa months ago, Nathan. Watched her climb and myself. I choked on the whiskey. She known? Then why? I started, but she cut me off. Greg's sloppy. I needed proof, leverage. You delivered. Leverage for what? Divorce? Blackmail? She wouldn't say, just pointed me to the stairs. Plug it in. Let's light 'em up. My head spun as I climbed, USB in hand. Context crashed into conflict. Claire wasn't my ally. She'd use me. But I'd use her too. Greg's smug face flashed in my mind, and I plugged the drive in. The screen flickered. Time to burn it all down. The projector hummed as the footage loaded, my hands steady despite the sweat on my neck. The ballroom buzzed below, laughter, clinking glasses, Greg's voice booming through a mic about vision and legacy. I hit play. The screen flared to life, and there it was, Lisa slipping into Greg's room, his tie dropping, her hands easing him down. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Greg's mic cut off mid-sentence. I stayed upstairs, hidden, watching chaos unfold. Claire's red dress stood out as she stepped back, arms crossed, letting it happen. People fumbled phones, recording the loop. 5 minutes of undeniable truth. No sound, just visuals that screamed louder than words. Greg bolted toward the tech booth, face red, yelling at staff. Too late. The stream was live. Thousands online saw it. Investors whispered, wives glared, and Greg's empire cracked in real time. I should have felt triumph, but Claire's calm rattled me. She'd planned this, fed me to the wolves to save herself. Therefore, I slipped downstairs, blending into the stunned crowd, needing answers. Lisa wasn't there. She'd stayed home, probably drowning in her wreckage. But Greg spotted me near the exit, eyes wild. "You!" he roared, lunging. I dodged, his fist clipping air. "You're dead, man." Security grabbed him, dragging him back as he cursed. I kept moving, heart pounding, until Claire intercepted me by the door. "Nice work," she said, smirking again. "He's finished." I glared. "You knew all along." "Why me?" She tilted her head, like I was a kid asking dumb questions. "Divorce court loves a paper trail," she said. "You gave me one. Public, messy, airtight." My stomach dropped. She played Greg, played Lisa, played me. All for her exit strategy. Conflict hit. I'd won, but she'd won bigger. "What about Lisa?" I asked. Claire shrugged. "Collateral." She picked her side. I walked out, the night air cold, stars faint above the city glow. Greg was ruined, Lisa exposed, but Claire's victory tasted sour. I'd wanted justice, not her chessboard. The USB felt heavy in my pocket, proof of my revenge and her trap. What now? I drove home in a haze, the gala's fallout buzzing in my head. Greg's career was toast. Social media was a slaughterhouse, his board already calling emergency meetings. Lisa's name was trending too. A punchline now, not a person. I'd done that. Me. But Claire's puppeteering stuck like grit in my teeth. She'd turned my pain into her jackpot, and I'd handed her the keys. I pulled into her driveway, expecting silence. Instead, Lisa was on the porch, suitcase packed, face streaked with mascara. "Nathan, wait," she said, voice cracking as I stepped out. "I saw the stream. I know what you did." I stared, waiting for the sob story. She rushed on. "Greg pushed me into it. I swear. He said he'd fire me, ruin us." I was scared. Scared? I laughed cold and hard. Scared enough to take his money? To sneak around for months? She flinched, clutching her bag. "I messed up. I'll fix it. Just don't leave me." Too late for that. I pulled out the bank statements, shoved them at her. $5,000 last month, Lisa. Explain that. Her mouth opened, then shut. Caught again. Therefore, I turned away, done listening. "Go," I said. She grabbed my arm, desperate. "I loved you. I still do." I shook her off. "You love his wallet. Get out." She stood there, trembling, then dragged her suitcase to her car and peeled off. Good riddance. But the quiet after felt hollow, not victorious. I went inside, poured a drink, and checked my phone. Text from friends, shock, support, a few "you okay?" Yes. Then an email from the reporter. Source says Claire's filing tomorrow. Greg's done. Filing? Divorce, then. Claire's endgame clicked. Public humiliation, financial chokehold, all tied up with my footage. She played it perfect. I wanted Lisa to hurt, Greg to fall, but now I wondered who'd really lost. The stars outside were bright, mocking me with their distance. I won the battle, sure. But Claire had won the war, and I was just the guy who lit the fuse. Morning hit like a hangover. No sleep, just coffee and regret simmering low. Lisa was gone, her side of the closet empty. A note on the counter. "I'm sorry. Too little, too late." The reporter's story had legs now. TV picked it up, Greg's face plastered on morning news. CEO, Scandal rocks community. Claire's divorce filing was public too, her lawyers citing irreconcilable differences, with a smirk for the cameras. My phone buzzed nonstop, coworkers, cousins, even my old high school buddy asking if I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. I went to work, fixed a condenser unit, kept my head down. But the whispers followed. Guys at the shop knew. I mean like I was some vigilante. I ignored it, focused on the hum of machinery. Revenge was supposed to feel good, right? So why did I feel like I'd been gutted too? Therefore, I drove back to Greg's that afternoon. Not to gloat, just to see the wreckage. His car was gone, gates locked, a for sale sign already up. Fast fall. Claire's doing, no doubt. Then she called. "Nathan, meet me." Same spot. I shouldn't have gone, but curiosity won. She was at the coffee shop, sipping tea this time, looking smug as ever. "It's over," she said. "Greg's broke. Lisa's a ghost. You're the hero." "Hero?" I snorted. "I'm the sucker who did your dirty work." She didn't deny it, just slid an envelope across the table. A thank you. Open it later. I didn't touch it, didn't trust her. Why me? I pressed. Her smile faded just a flicker. You were convenient. Angry. Motivated. Then the bomb dropped. I hired Lisa, she said, calm as stone. Told her to keep Greg busy, give me grounds. She jumped at the cash. My head reeled. Lisa wasn't just cheating. She was Claire's plant? You ruined her, I said. Claire shrugged. She ruined herself. You just made it loud. I stood, dizzy, and walked out. The envelope stayed. Stars blinked above as I drove, cold and clear. I'd thought I'd won, but Claire had rigged the game from day one. And Lisa? She'd been a pawn too. I didn't open Claire's envelope. Tossed it in a drawer, let rot. Whatever she offered, money, thanks, I didn't want her strings. The news cycle churned on. Greg's company tanked, stocks plummeting, his name a punchline. Lisa vanished. No calls, no trace, probably hiding out with whatever she'd stashed. I went back to work, fixed units, kept quiet. Friends stopped texting, the buzz faded, and life settled into a dull hum. But I wasn't the same. The guy who trusted Lisa, who dreamed with her, was gone. Nights were the worst. I'd sit on the porch, scope beside me, staring at constellations I used to love. Orion, Cassiopeia, they didn't calm me anymore, just reminded me how small I was, how blind I'd been. Claire's confession replayed. She'd hired Lisa, turned my wife into her weapon, then used me to swing it. I'd wanted revenge, sure. Lisa's betrayal had carved me hollow. But I'd handed Claire the knife, and she'd cut deeper than I'd ever planned. I saw her one last time, weeks later, at the grocery store. She was alone, no red dress, just jeans and a tired face. Nathan, she said, nodding. I stared, words stuck. You happy now? I asked. She shrugged. Free. That's enough. Free? She torched Greg, walked away with millions, left me with ashes. I grabbed my beer and left, no goodbye. She didn't deserve one. Therefore, I moved on, sold the house, ditched Lisa's stuff, started over. The star stayed, though. I'd set up my scope in a new yard, trace patterns, let the quiet sink in. I wasn't the hero or the villain, just the guy who'd survived. Lisa's lies, Greg's fall, Claire's game, they'd changed me. Hardened me, maybe, but I wasn't broken. Not yet. I'd wanted justice, gotten chaos, and learned the cost. Next time, I'd look closer before I leaped. Thank you for tuning into this story. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you're watching from right now. Let us know in the comments.